You will never feel like this again.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about Episode 3 of The Acolyte, which is apparently the most controversial thing to happen in Star Wars since teddy bears took down the Empire. A little later, I want to talk to Mike Mazzio and Tommy Bechtold about this, but first, guys, here's my take. And by the way, guys, Mike has a theory about May and Osha that you are not going to want to miss. I can't tell if it's the stupidest theory I ever heard or the most clever, but trust me, you're going to love it. And also, me, Mike, and Tommy are going to talk about who we think the mysterious Sith Lord is and really how this is all going to lead to the fall of the Jedi that we saw in the prequel trilogy. One thing I love about The Acolyte so far is that it is very different from most Star Wars we've ever gotten before. Now, overall, I think that is a very good thing, and it's exactly what I wanted from this show. Something new and different that isn't directly spun off of the original trilogy. But honestly, I think the show is missing something so far that I think Star Wars in general has been missing in recent years. But I'll get into what I didn't like about the episode a little bit later after I talk to Mike and Tommy. As always, guys, thanks for watching and supporting our channel, and please check out this Anakin Kills Sand Revenge shirt for sale, along with lots of other Star Wars parody merch like the Hello There, Somehow Palpatine Returned, the original trilogy, and more at our merch store, ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design the merch ourselves. You can find links for all of those down below. So first, let's talk about one of the reasons this episode is so controversial. A lot of people didn't like that the show just stopped its forward momentum to devote an entire episode to a flashback. And, you know, we have seen this kind of abrupt stop really throw off audiences before, like when Stranger Things Season 2 devoted an entire episode to 11 Chicago Adventure, or like in the Book of Boba Fett, where an entire episode was devoted to The Mandalorian like it was a backdoor pilot to a show that already existed. Normally, we see flashbacks like this woven into the structure of the present-day story. Shows like Lost or Orange is the New Black use flashbacks to enhance the A-plot storyline that takes place in the present day. You know, the way the Book of Boba Fett should have structured their show. And look, I know I dump on the Book of Boba Fett a lot, but that show actually had one key element that I think's missing from The Acolyte, which I'll talk about in just a bit. Personally, though, I like that we had this break in the main storyline. Showrunner Leslie Headland told The Hollywood Reporter that the structure of the show is going to imitate the classic Kurosawa film Rashomon. So in that film, we see the same events transpire through different points of view. So this episode is a key building block to establishing that mystery. We see all of these events from Osha's point of view. And even though this episode has some answers, like who was her family and how did she meet the Jedi, all of these answers actually just raise more questions. And that's just good mystery storytelling. Every reveal should feel a little bit satisfying, but then leave you wanting more. Frankly, this saga has not had a good mystery since Who Were Rey's parents, and even then they've squandered that mystery when too many people felt like they had to raise a leg on the answer.
Who are you? You're a Palpatine.
So this is an unconventional structure for a TV show, but I like that. I want to experiment with Star Wars. Give us different genres, show different characters, take risks. I don't even mind the occasional swing and a miss, like the uneven plotting of The Mandalorian Season 3. Like, I would love to see Star Wars experiment with even more kinds of storytelling and different structures. Frankly, the novels have been telling stories in different ways for years, so let's see live action catch up to all of that inventiveness. But still, there is one thing missing from Disney Star Wars that I really miss, which I'll talk about in just a second. But first, this episode is also controversial for other reasons. So I want to bring on Mike Mazzio and Tommy Bechtold to get their thoughts on this episode and on Star Wars fandom. So Tommy, how about you? What were your thoughts on this episode as a whole?
You know, breaking against the grain of what I've read from some of my compatriots, I loved this episode. I compared this to a broken egg episode, kind of a scramble. It's messy. It messed things up. It kind of made maybe a little things more confusing. Didn't really clarify a lot of things, but I thought there was so much interesting. I don't know, the callbacks to certain key phrases in Star Wars, unnatural, referring to the dark side of the Force and things you can do is unnatural. The kind of little spices of Darth Plagueis and, like, you know, creating life. Like, are we getting Plagueis? It's big speculation in this here Star Wars frontier. I personally, I enjoyed this episode. I'm not a hater of standalone episodes. I've been in a few standalone episodes of TV shows that have been hated, so I understand the pushback. But to me, this episode was a flashback episode, but it included 90% of the series regulars in the show. So yes, it took place not in the current timeline of the show, but I think it told an interesting story, gave us more details into May and Osha's separation and confusion over whether each other were alive. I was all for it. I like it.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get your theories on the Plagueis and all that kind of stuff and where you think this is going in just a little bit. And, you know, one thing I didn't mention earlier is I think streaming shows have kind of spoiled us for one kind of storytelling. And a lot of these Disney Plus shows are designed as streaming shows, which is like edge of your seat television where you just want to click the next one. I think had this entire show dropped in one day, people would be fine with this and it wouldn't matter. Mike, what about you? What were your thoughts overall in the episode?
I like this episode. I don't think it was my favorite one out of the 3 that we've seen so far, but I didn't think it was bad by any means. I think that a lot of the hate that it's getting is really undeserved. I liked the world building here. They were telling us a story. We found out that this coven of witches are not from, is it Braddock? Is that the name of the planet that they're on?
I think Brandok maybe, yeah.
And so that makes me, theorize, well, where did they come from? Did they come from Dathomir? Did they come from that other galaxy that we saw in Ahsoka? What's their backstory there? What are they all about? The chanting was a little hokey. I didn't exactly love that. I think I might have laughed at that point. The whole like 1, 2, many. I was like, all right, yeah. I don't
know, man. That's their sacred ritual, and I think you stepping on it like that is pretty disrespectful to their
very
religion.
Insensitive of me. I apologize. I am not familiar with
all
the culture.
I mean, look, Mike, you have to be sensitive to all the Force witches on Twitter, and if there are Force witches out there, I guarantee you they're on Twitter.
Yes,
1,000,000%.
One way or the other.
But I really liked this episode. I thought it did a great job of building the backstory of these characters. I thought we saw a really interesting line in this episode from Anastasia where May and Osha are fighting, and May says, the Jedi are evil, and Osha says, the Jedi are good. And Anastasia jumps in and says, look, there is no good or evil. This is about power and who is allowed to wield it, right? I think this whole series is about looking at the Jedi from a different point of view and seeing that at this era in the Old Republic, where the Jedi are by the number of the tens of thousands, that they kind of feel untouchable. They can do whatever they want. So they come to this planet that's not even within their jurisdiction. And they're essentially saying to these witches, hey, we heard that you're training kids to use the Force. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. Only we are allowed to train kids to use the Force. And so we're just going to take your kids from you now, which sounds like a Fox News fever dream, honestly.
It really does. It really does. So is this episode, actually. We'll talk about that in just a little bit.
But the whole thing is about like overreach and the Jedi doing too much and abusing their power and abusing the influence that they had, and that maybe this hubris is what eventually led to the downfall of the Jedi Order.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we're talking about Leslie Headland said this is going to be a Rashomon type thing. This episode is from the point of view of a child. She is the first person we see in the episode. I am sure we will see the episode from the point of view of May, and then we will see the episode from the point of view of the Jedi. And I think every episode, I think Osha, we're seeing this and going, ooh, the Jedi kind of come off in a bad light here. And in the May episode, I think we're going to see, oh, the Jedi really come off bad here. But then I think in the Jedi point of view episode, we're going to get the truth. Their motivation of, oh, you have children here reminded me of Waco, where the reason the government was surrounding that compound was because there were kids inside and they wanted to make sure the children weren't being abused. And afterwards, you're kind of left with this mystery of what really occurred within that cult. And I think they're going for something similar here where, because it is fiction, we will see what actually happened. And I think that ultimately the Jedi will be mostly vindicated because we're going to get that interesting backstory of these Force witches kind of filled in. But Tommy, you got to admit what Mike said. It's pretty brave of Lucasfilm to even try to paint the Jedi in a negative light, because the prequels kind of showed that they were inadequate, but not that they were the bad guys.
No, certainly not. And I think, a lot of that, those sentiments have kind of been almost fan theory driven, that much like the Daniel LaRusso in The Karate Kid is the villain. He's the true villain of The Karate Kid. It's like, it's almost kind of a not edgy, but it's like a twisted opinion about Star Wars. The Jedi are bad, but this show or are not the good guys, rather. This show is kind of flat out saying, from depending on your point of view, the Jedi may not be this virtuous, guild of knights and masters that were there to protect and serve the galaxy. They may have, acted selfishly and acted with prejudice, and I think this episode certainly. I think what you said before, Ryan, is right on. We've seen the different POVs are going to reveal the truths to different characters, and we'll probably get the audience truth from the POV of the Jedis, of course. And it seems to me now, like I said, alluded to before, things have gotten muddier rather than clearer on the show, and I don't mind that for a mystery. I don't.
A great mystery is all about that.
Exactly.
The more the more you know, the more you want to know.
Exactly. So I say keep giving me more POVs and more information, and on my riddled, concussioned brain will try and solve it, and I'll continue to come on here and stammer through answers. So we'll be great.
Yeah, but the idea of different points of view is inherent in Star Wars. Like Return of the Jedi, obviously, some of what I told you is true from a certain point of view, but also in Revenge of the Sith. Well, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Revenge of the Sith did a pretty bad job explaining Anakin's point of view on that. If you look at you watch the Clone Wars, you kind of get it, but the fact that Anakin went from 0 to child murder in a couple of seconds is pretty messed up.
It did not take much.
No, it really didn't. And I think this show is going to be, again, the best thing about all these shows, Clone Wars and/or Mandalorian, they fill in the gaps of the movies in a way that make the movies better. And I think this show, Mike, has the potential to really set up the Phantom Menace, especially, we mentioned earlier, they have this similar wording to Plagueis and stuff like that. A few days ago, we were going to do a theory talk back, but then Colton Ogburn made this fantastic theory video on the channel that you guys should watch it if you haven't already, that talked about how, Plagueis and the creation of life and the twins could be that. Mike, you also had some interesting theories on where the hell this came from. What's your hot theory on the show right now?
Man, well, I've already told it to you, and I know you think that I'm crazy, and hopefully the folks
dumb.
at home
it's really dumb.
think that I am crazy too. But I'm going to throw it out there because one of these times I'm going to be right. I really think that both May and Osha are inhabiting the same body. There it is. Let it sink in for a second. Here's what I think happened.
You mean, okay, just so we're clear, before you're gonna explain this, but you mean like Fight Club?
Yeah, kind of like a Fight Club or like a Malignant, like an A24 Malignant.
Okay. All right. I'll shut up. I'll let you explain your dumb theory.
This is what I think happened. I think the Jedi showed up on Brandok. They've got these two little girls. One's good, one's bad. One is trainable for them, right? One is one that could come and join the Jedi Order, and they think that she's really powerful, and they're like, we've got to have her. May starts a fire, burns the place down. I don't think that May died in the fire. I think that Osha died in the fire, and that the Jedi, wanting to punish May for what she did and wanting to preserve Osha, maybe supplanted Osha's consciousness from her body into May's body.
Wow.
And we have seen something like this before. We know that, somehow Palpatine returned. He transferred his consciousness into one of his clones. So there is precedent in Star Wars for consciousness transferring. And the thing that I keep coming back to is, what was Torben so repentant about that he killed himself just to make it up to May, right? I think that's what they did. This is a point of hubris for the Jedi Order where they think that they can get away with anything. We're doing the right thing, so we're justified. We can do whatever we want, even if it means supplanting a little girl's consciousness with the consciousness of her sister. So I think that both Osha and May have been in there that entire life. I think that that's actually May's body. I think at some point she's going to lift back her dreads and we're going to see the spiral on her forehead. And then it's all going to come together, because every time that we see them on screen, the one time that we've seen Osha and May actually interact as adults, there's nobody else around. As soon as the other Jedi run in, boom, she takes off, she drives away. I think that a lot of this can be explained through Jedi mind tricks, which I think play very heavily into the series, like more so than we think. They started the first episode by establishing, hey, do you guys remember that Jedi mind tricks are a thing? And here's the thing about Osha and May too. They don't really have physical force powers, or if they do, they're very limited, but they have very strong mental force powers. And that means Jedi mind tricks and possibly even projecting an image of themselves in the same way that Luke did in The Last Jedi. And so that could possibly explain how sometimes they've been in two places at once, or somebody saw them. Oh, I saw she just got here. She didn't kill Torben. Jedi mind tricks. I think that Osha / May, whatever you want to call her, is significantly more powerful than they all realize, and that she's playing them flat out.
One thing that might support that theory. I know. So one thing that might support that theory.
I gotta give it up for that. That was incredible.
I know. And look, I'll just say, Mike, you're a lawyer. You expressed it far more eloquently in speech than you did in text. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, my texts are rambling.
No.
It is a dumb theory. It's probably wrong, but I kind of want it to be
true. But you make it sound so cool, right? As soon as you bring up
really
Fight
do.
Club,
You sell
I
it.
haven't seen Malignant. So one thing that would be interesting to see in that is the first two episodes, the titles are blank slash blank, like revenge slash justice.
Yeah.
So it could be that. And then this episode doesn't have that. And that could be why, because we're seeing from two different points of view.
Their weird little chant, I give you, you give me. Like they're kind of, and again, we don't know how they were made. Clearly there was some type of something nefarious was done to bring them into existence. It's just alluded to. We don't know what it was yet. But I think it's possible that, they are manifestations of the witch's version of the Force, which they call the thread, and that they are like the physical embodiment of that. The chant that they do too, one, two, many. In The Rise of Skywalker, when Rey is hearing all of the voices at the end in the final fight, don't they say something to the effect of, all of us live within you now?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there may be like a Being John Malkovich type of thing where it's like all of these witches that have come before them, all of their souls are inhabiting these bodies. And that, soul transferring, if that's what you want to call it, is a thing that they do and that is common in their culture and their use of the Force.
Would you say that these witches are moving in a soul train?
Yeah, possibly.
I hate you, Tommy. I hate you. You're supposed to be a professional. You've done how many levels?
I think it's more like a love train.
Television credits, and that's the best you can do.
No.
Like Mike,
I'm exhausted.
Mike is coming on here. Mike is taking basically a theory that sounds cool, but probably can't unless OSHA and May are changing their clothes super fast, probably can't exist in the show. And he is taking that flimsy premise and weaving it into spun gold. And you are throwing out the lamest pun based on a 70s TV show. I hate you, Tommy Beckford.
I like Tommy's pun better than I like my own theory.
I fundamentally disagree with what you just said, Mike. This is the worst day of my life.
All right, I move to strike this from the record. We have an attorney here. Strike my words.
No, Mike, I think your theory is a lot of fun. And again, going to the Rashomon thing, I could see, in Fight Club during the reveal, spoilers for a 25-year-old movie, in Fight Club in the reveal, we'd see past events played out with just that person standing there. We could see the same thing with the speeder.
We could see
where, I don't know, OSHA takes a stun shot at nothing, then runs over, changes their clothes, hops in the speeder. Again, we're seeing things from different points of view.
Or a lot of that was Jedi mind trick and was projection. And here's the thing too, that I think helps back this up, because when I watched episode 3, I thought, oh, okay, well, we're seeing this whole backstory now. Maybe I'm wrong. But at the end, when she wakes up on the Jedi starship and she immediately says, what happened? And then Soul starts to fill her in on what happened. I'm sorry, I didn't see her get bonked on the head at any point during the escape from the Jedi Temple. I also don't see how all those witches died in a fire, because none of them were burnt. I think they all got run through with a lightsaber. I think the Jedi killed all of them. And then basically kidnapped this little girl, brainwashed her, and now they're telling her their version of events. Hey, this is what happened. Your sister tried to kill everybody and accidentally killed herself in the process, and both of your mothers. Everybody's dead. But don't worry, we're going to take care of you now. Why does she have amnesia?
Can I throw in something from episode 1?
Yeah.
That could have been foreshadowing that proves your theory. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm actually supporting your theory.
Anything to help support me, please.
20 minutes ago, I was like, nah, we can't. Now I'm thinking, after episode 4, we might just turn this whole theory into a video. In episode 1, there is a part where she is following her twin around, presumably within her mind. And I pointed out in our Easter egg video, the twin isn't literally there because she's not leaving footprints, right? And it's just like with Luke in The Last Jedi, not leaving tracks in the salt in the final duel on Crate. But force projection exists in this universe, right? So if we're talking about, okay, well, this person isn't literally there at one point or another, if she has, DID, maybe she is force projecting the other May or the other OSHA. And that makes me want to go back and actually watch and see, does she ever make contact, OSHA, with anyone? Or in the way that Luke made contact with his saber to Kylo Ren? Are there certain things that these characters have done that could have been a matter of force projection? Could one of them have just always lived their life as a force projection and May still died? I don't know.
I think they're switching back and forth. Sometimes she actually is May, sometimes she actually is OSHA, and when she's one, she's force projecting the other. But if you go back, another thing, if you go back and rewatch episode 2, the interaction with the apothecary is really interesting if you're believing my theory. Because it's almost like he's threatening her in that moment when he's like, wow, you look just like her.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting? And then she's like literally about to kill him before the other Jedi come in. And then he sets her up to be found out. He goes, oh yeah, you want to catch her? Well, she's coming here tonight, so you guys can confront her. And I guess both May and Osha are going to have to be there together at the same time. We'll see how that works. It's like inviting Bruce Wayne and Batman to the same function because you want to get him caught. Like, I think that's what that scene was. And I think when you go back and rewatch it with that context, there's a lot of subtext there.
Okay.
I'm willing to buy a few small shares of stock in this theory, but
I
do want to mention that there is that Sith Lord still out there, right?
Yeah.
There is that mystery dark side of the Force user who I think is ultimately who killed all of those witches. I believe that there's been an interloper, possibly within the coven or observing nearby. We know that they're not very good at knowing whether or not they're being surveilled, as Soul was able to, observe the girls with limited detection. So,
Along those same lines, though, the big thing about our Colton's video earlier in the week was who is the Sith Lord. I think this episode definitely set up that Chimere is the obvious choice, right? He's kind of the goofball. He's sort of like Yoda when Luke first sees him. I would put all my chips on that, and I think that's going to end up being the obvious reveal. Because, Mike, if they are going to do your reveal, they need a red herring reveal. They need something that seems obvious that we figure out before they really pull the rug out from under us. Who do you guys think the Sith Lord could be?
Well, the thing that I found most interesting is it's like the man. If you watched a pretty good Apple Plus series that only did one season, Rabbit Hole, it's like there's always a guy in the ear. There's always a voice in the ear. I'm wondering if whoever the Sith Lord is controlling Chimere, and then we're going to get a bigger reveal that maybe one of the mothers in the coven is the Sith Lord, or I'm trying to think when we talk about controlling and protecting death, are we sure Indara actually died, or is Indara, a secret Sith Lord? That's my more wild out there theory, but I would say if it is Chimere, like you said, that is being kind of spoon fed to us right now in a certain way. I would say he's more. It's like a double red herring where there will then be another voice in his ear that is something perhaps more familiar to us.
Awesome theories, guys. Like, I am truly, Mike, I'm really amazed. And I apologize again for not giving your theory more credence. It's rare.
No, that's okay. I should be doubted often.
No. It's rare on the show for somebody to convince me or persuade me, I guess. You are a lawyer. So you are trained in how to convince people of things. So well done.
I'm also just charming. Just naturally. I just have
You got a nice full beard. I just really appreciate it.
My charisma stat is maxed out.
That's right. You're rizzed up, bro. As the kids would say, sheesh. All right.
I want to pivot just for a little bit, before we run out of time here. One thing about this episode that is truly annoying is there were legions of toxic people who already decided what they thought of this show before it came out, right? So again, we all have confirmation bias in how we approach everything. I do think, though, that poisoning the meta waves with just your predetermined bias against anything that includes women or any other kind of people, nothing about this show or this episode especially, it didn't even register with me that was going on. I was so focused on the character and the story, and until I got online, I thought, wait, why are people complaining? People never complain about the things I think they're going to complain about. You know what I mean? So it was a shame to see the discourse centered around the wrong things, when frankly, we should be talking about Mike's theory.
I agree.
Should.
Mike's theory should be the number one trending topic on Twitter right now. And I think
hashtag Mike's theory.
Hashtag save Mike. I think the
Lucasfilm is coming for me because I just spilled the beans. Boeing whistleblower.
We have to silence him. They're gonna offer you your own solo stay in that Star Wars hotel that is closing, or is
it's haunted now. It's haunted by Bob Chapek. So Tommy, where do you think this is going to go then? So we've got all these little reveals. You mentioned earlier we do have the like-minded language of creation of life through the Force. Do you think the series is going to show us Plagueis and 8-year-old Palpatine around a test tube going like creating some midi-chlorians to make Anakin? What's the point here?
I mean, that would certainly be on the nose, but I do think we are getting I think we will get Darth Plagueis. I mean, it's one of the few, in terms of live action, mentioned characters that carries a lot of weight with Star Wars fans that we have not met yet. So I think that certainly matters in terms of establishing that character and what could become with a Palpatine prequel series or whatever you may want, if you how depending on how big of a Sheev head you are, which I, of course, am a massive member of the Sheev Brigade. But I think we're definitely headed towards Plagueis and then a young Sheev. I do think we will see that at the conclusion of this. We'll see the beginning of that relationship, because who's to say, just because we're shown in the prequels that the Sith tend to be older or whatever, it's like, who's to say that they didn't, there weren't situations where Sith Lords took on an apprentice at a young age as well. I mean, it would stand to reason that Sith Lords are probably easier to train, just like Jedi, the younger they are,
Yeah, true. And I think if we, in all seriousness, if we could just get serious about our space sagas here first. Yeah, I mean,
come on, guys.
I take Star Wars very seriously, as I'm sure all of you do too. Plagueis could be Chimere, right? That's about the right age, because you think Palpatine's got to be what, 50s maybe in Phantom Menace.
Right.
20 years later, he's 70s, like 90 by the time of the original trilogy. I mean, let's be generous, and say that's the case, and he's already learned to elongate his life. So if that's the case, probably not going to see Palpatine in the show. Plagueis, though, totally could just be a young man. Palpatine could have overthrown him when he was in his own 20s or 30s or whatever. It's interesting. Maybe we'll even see, how like they had the Death Star in Attack of the Clones, but it was in the background. You didn't notice it. We might even see, like, maybe Palpatine followed Plagueis's plan to overthrow the Republic. Like this could have been something they plotted together. Not sure, but it's exciting. Like the Acolyte's a very exciting show. Yeah, because I can't remember the last time we talked about Star Wars like this, and we're like, I mean, I wonder, what's actually going on with that.
Dude, the wire fights alone, amazing.
Such a no-brainer,
cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, Jedi would do that. They can lift themselves with the Force, and
especially Jedi of that era, right? Like where they were like more in tune with the Force, and like were more free to kind of use it in any way they want. I feel like the Jedi that we see in the prequels is like more of a like traditionalist, like really strict adherence to the Jedi Order and the Jedi ways and the sacred Jedi texts. And the Jedi that we're seeing in this show, again, they're at like the peak of their power, and a lot of them are maybe not like the best Jedi who are like super devout and pious. And so they're like, yeah, I can do this. I can do that. I can do whatever I want.
And is this, are we being told the story that humbles the Jedi and pushes them back into an era of almost fanaticism?
Exactly I think we're definitely going to see how the High Republic ended, right? This will be the delineation between these eras, the High Republic era and the Clone Wars era, for sure.
Can I ask you two guys a question about this?
Oh, please, man, go ahead.
Why do you think that Vernestra is in this show?
One interesting thing, because like I know her from the High Republic. I did a lot of research really quick because I actually missed out on all of her stories in Phase 1. For one thing, it's an interesting arc to show how she was a way seeker, and now she's come and she's part of the Jedi ruling class. It's also interesting because she's fulfilling this role that's showing us that the Jedi have to keep secrets from the Senate. And I think maybe just seeing that arc, she began so idealistic and so independent, and now she's more cynical and political, might be an arc for how the Jedi, from the start of the Nihil crisis, have started to decline. That's my guess. What do you think?
She's the living embodiment of the speech that Palpatine gives Anakin in the when they're attending the show, when he first tells him the legend of Darth Plagueis. Like she is the actual proof of the doubt that although Palpatine is doing it for his own benefit and for his own evil intentions, he's not wrong, right? Like that's like kind of the rub, is like the Jedi aren't telling secrets and are spying on him and all this. They're spying on him because he's doing something, he's got an evil plot. But I think she exists to kind of fortify that argument and continue, because I think, as we said earlier, this show is kind of putting the spotlight firmly on where do the Jedi truly fall as heroes of the Star Wars sagas? Like are they the Avengers, or are they more of the Thunderbolts? Is it I mean, they're certainly not the villains, but are they something a little more in the gray area? So,
Mike, do you have a thought on it?
I mean, I think at this point in time,
I thought you were done, Tommy. Sorry to cut
No, that's all good. I always just ramble. I was a middle child, so I had to keep talking to get an extra pork chop at dinner.
All right, shut up, Jan.
I mean, I think at this point in time, the Jedi are like Miami-Dade County PD. Like, there's a ton of them. They all have a lot of power. They're not all super well versed in how to use it.
Wow, what an incredibly regional engine.
Sorry about it.
I got it.
No, all good.
305.
But as far as Vernestra is concerned, I have not read the Legends books, so do not come for me in the comments.
They're not legends.
You're not going to get your
They're High
references.
Republic, but whatever. Actually, they're not legends.
There we go. I think it's not a 0% chance that she's the one that's training May. Because at the very beginning of the first episode, Soul's like, I got to go after her. Vernestra's the one that's like, stay away from this, Soul. Stay out of this. Don't get in my way. I think that she is a like Jedi Order, like absolutist. Like, she believes all this stuff. She was not there on the trip to Brandok, right? And when they come back to Coruscant and she learns of what they did, if my theory is correct, that might be the tipping point for her, where she's like, all right, we're doing this now. This is what we're doing now. Screw the Jedi Order. All right, I'm going to stay in here and I'm going to break this down from the inside. I'm going to get this little girl. I'm going to raise her up right, and I'm going to flip her and get her to go against them.
That would be a lot more in line with everything that she does in the High Republic books. Well, guys, I'm having a great time, but I got to stop it there. Mike, Tommy, you can find their social links below, guys. They're great follows on all the platforms. Highly recommend you do it. So earlier I said there was one thing about new Star Wars that I miss, and it's fun. Right, what do you mean? Well, the original movie dealt with heavy subjects: overthrowing a fascist government, the genocide of a planet, a boy's parents being burned alive, and he actually finds their bodies. But that movie also managed to be fun.
Listen to them, they're dying, R2. Curse my metal body, I wasn't fast enough, it's all my fault.
Empire Strikes Back went even darker, but it was still fun.
Yeah, so why don't you just
get your shit out?
Hey, get out of there!
And as much as I don't like what J.J. Abrams did to the entire saga, his movies were fun. They Fly Now is fun. Hell, even The Emperor Returning is fun. It's dumb fun, but fun, like a Motley Crue album. This episode of The Acolyte is well acted, well filmed, brilliantly plotted. It's so good. It's also a real downer. Now, I'm not saying that I don't want serious dramatic Star Wars like The Acolyte or Andor. I do want that. I want that very much. Star Wars can be a drama. It can be a comedy or a kid's show. It can be anything. But like, on an overall look here, when was the last time we got fun live-action Star Wars? Ahsoka and Mando Season 3 were so focused on world building that they weren't really that fun most of the time. Hell, I don't even really like the character of Ezra, but when he finally showed up in Ahsoka, I was relieved, because he's fun.
Close.
Honestly, the last time Star Wars was an absolute good time was the finale of Book of Boba Fett. We got a Wookiee, we got Rancor, cyber mods, Grogu doing force jumps, Cad Bane dueling Boba Fett. I just want a little bit more space adventure and a little less saga building. That's why Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 were such a relief. They only had one job: to entertain you. Again, I love building out the saga. I even love the random Coruscant episode of Mandalorian season 3. And I also love the Acolyte so far, and I loved this episode. But in addition to that, I want to see people have a good time while they fight space Nazis. So let me know your thoughts on Acolyte Episode 3 down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.